Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished his morning workout routine in the ship's small gym. The mechanical whir of the resistance machines was a comforting sound, reminding him of home. He had been assigned to the diplomatic vessel Horizon's Gate for 3 months now, and maintaining his fitness routine was one of the few things that kept him sane during the long space journey. The ship was currently orbiting Keltros Prime, the homeworld of the Zenthari Collective. Today was supposed to be a big deal. The humans were finally going to meet the Zenthari leadership face-to-face after months of careful communication. Jake was just an engineer, but everyone on board had been ordered to attend the welcome ceremony. Commander Lisa Hayes had made it clear that this meeting could change everything for humanity's position in the galaxy. Pete Collins, Jake's closest friend on the ship, knocked on the gym door. He looked nervous in his formal uniform, constantly adjusting his collar. Jake had never seen Pete this worried before. Pete worked in the communications department and usually joked about everything, but today he seemed different. "You better hurry up and get changed," Pete said, glancing at his watch. "The Zenthari delegation arrives in 40 minutes. Hayes will kill us if we're late." Jake nodded and headed to the showers. He had heard so much about the Zenthari over the past few months. They were one of the most powerful civilizations in this sector of space. Their technology was centuries ahead of humanity's, and they controlled dozens of star systems. More importantly, they were known for being extremely formal and serious about everything. One wrong move could ruin everything. After getting dressed in his formal uniform, Jake made his way to the main observation deck. The room was already filling up with crew members and diplomats. Everyone stood in neat rows, looking stiff and uncomfortable. Commander Hayes stood at the front, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Dr. Kevin Wright, the cultural liaison, stood beside her holding a data pad. He kept whispering last-minute instructions to the commander. The observation deck had large windows that showed the planet below. Keltros Prime was beautiful, with purple oceans and green continents. 3 small moons orbited nearby, casting strange shadows on the planet's surface. Jake had never seen anything like it back on Earth. "Remember," Commander Hayes announced to everyone, "the Zenthari value precision and respect above all else. Speak only when spoken to. Keep your comments brief and formal. Do not touch any Zenthari without explicit permission. Do not ask personal questions. And for the love of everything, do not make any jokes." Jake felt his stomach tighten. He wasn't good at formal situations. Back home, he was known for being friendly and casual with everyone. His mother always said he could talk to a brick wall and make it laugh. But here, in this moment, he knew he needed to keep his mouth shut. The large doors at the far end of the observation deck opened with a soft hiss. The Zenthari delegation entered, and the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Jake had seen pictures, but nothing prepared him for seeing them in person. The Zenthari were tall, much taller than humans. They stood at least 7 feet high, with bodies covered in what looked like crystalline plates. The plates formed a kind of exoskeleton that reflected the light in rainbow patterns. Their faces were angular, with large, multifaceted eyes that seemed to see everything at once. They moved with a grace that seemed impossible for creatures so large. Leading the group was Ambassador Krethazara. She was impressive in every way. Her crystalline plates were deep blue and purple, arranged in perfect symmetrical patterns across her body. Each plate seemed to catch the light differently, creating a shimmering effect as she moved. She wore formal robes that hung from her shoulders, but left most of her exoskeleton visible. Commander Hayes stepped forward and bowed slightly, exactly as Dr. Wright had instructed. The ambassador returned the gesture with precise movements. They began the formal greeting ritual, speaking in careful, measured tones. Jake tried to pay attention, but he found himself fascinated by the Zenthari's appearance. He had always been interested in physical fitness and body structure. It was one of the reasons he spent so much time in the gym. Looking at Ambassador Krethazara, he could see the incredible detail in her exoskeleton. The plates weren't just for show. They were clearly functional, probably providing protection while allowing flexibility. The way they were arranged suggested hours of careful maintenance and work. The formal speeches continued. Jake's mind wandered. He noticed how the light hit certain plates on the ambassador's shoulders and back. The definition was remarkable. You could see the individual segments, each one perfectly formed. It reminded him of the way muscle definition looked on serious athletes back home. The meet and greet portion of the ceremony began. The Zenthari delegation spread out slightly, and some crew members were allowed to approach and introduce themselves briefly. Jake found himself standing near Ambassador Krethzara as she spoke with one of the human scientists. Pete was beside him, looking terrified of saying something wrong. The scientist finished her brief introduction and moved away. There was a moment of silence. Ambassador Krethzara turned slightly, and the light from the windows hit her exoskeleton perfectly. The definition in the plates was even more impressive up close. Jake could see the dedication it must take to maintain something like that. Without thinking, his mouth opened. The words came out before his brain could stop them. It was exactly what he would say to someone at the gym back home, someone who clearly put in serious work on their physique. "Wow, those plates are incredible," Jake said with genuine enthusiasm. "You must work really hard to maintain that definition." The entire observation deck went silent. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Every human froze in place. Pete's face went completely white. Commander Hayes' eyes went wide with horror. Dr. Wright dropped his datapad, and it clattered loudly on the metal floor. The Zenthari guards, who had been standing calmly at the edges of the room, suddenly moved. Their plasma staffs came up in defensive positions. Their multifaceted eyes all turned toward Jake. The air in the room seemed to crackle with tension. Ambassador Krethzara stood completely still. Her crystalline plates seemed to darken slightly. The other Zenthari in her delegation made strange clicking sounds that the translation devices couldn't interpret. Jake realized with growing horror that he had said something terribly wrong. He just didn't know what. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he watched Ambassador Krethzara's plates shift through different colors. What had been deep blue and purple now flickered with hints of angry red. The clicking sounds from the other Zenthari grew louder and more aggressive. Commander Hayes stepped forward quickly, her hands raised in what she hoped was a peaceful gesture. Her voice was steady despite the panic Jake could see in her eyes. She began apologizing in the most formal language possible, using phrases that Dr. Wright had taught the crew for emergencies. But Ambassador Krethzara wasn't listening. She turned sharply, her robes flowing behind her. The other Zenthari delegates immediately fell into formation behind her. Without another word, they marched toward the exit. Their plasma staffs remained raised until they left the room. The heavy doors closed behind them with a sound that felt like a death sentence. The moment the Zenthari were gone, chaos erupted. Commander Hayes spun around to face Jake, her face red with anger and fear. Dr. Wright was frantically typing on his recovered datapad, muttering to himself. Other crew members stared at Jake like he had just started a war. "My quarters now." Commander Hayes pointed at Jake. Her voice was ice cold. She looked at Pete. "You too, Collins. I want to know exactly what happened." Jake followed the commander through the corridors of the ship. His legs felt weak. His mind raced trying to understand what he had done wrong. It was just a compliment. He had meant it in a good way. How could saying someone looked good be offensive? Commander Hayes' quarters were small but organized. She sat behind her desk and gestured for Jake and Pete to stand in front of her. Dr. Wright hurried in a moment later, his datapad clutched to his chest like a shield. He was breathing hard like he had been running. "Explain," Commander Hayes said simply, looking at Jake. Jake swallowed hard. "I was just giving her a compliment, Commander. Her plates looked really well maintained. I thought I was being nice." Dr. Wright made a sound like a wounded animal. He looked at Jake with an expression of pure horror. "You have no idea what you've done, do you?" "I just said her plates looked good," Jake protested. "How is that bad?" Dr. Wright sat down heavily in a chair. He put his head in his hands for a moment, then looked up at Jake. His face had gone pale. In Zenthari culture, the exoskeleton plates are considered extremely private. Commenting on them is it's like commenting on someone's... He paused, searching for the right comparison. Pete spoke up quietly. "He's saying you basically told their ambassador she had a nice body in front of everyone. But in their culture, it's even worse than that." Jake felt his stomach drop. "But I didn't mean it that way. I was talking about fitness and maintenance. Like when you compliment someone at the gym." "The Zenthari don't have gyms," Dr. Wright explained, his voice tired. "They maintain their exoskeleton in complete privacy. It's something only discussed between mates or medical professionals. What you said would be like a stranger walking up to you on Earth and loudly commenting on your reproductive organs." The blood drained from Jake's face. He sat down without being invited, his legs suddenly unable to support him. Oh no, oh no, no, no. Commander Hayes rubbed her temples. She looked like she had aged 10 years in the last 15 minutes. The Xanthari government is already sending messages. They're calling it a grave insult to their ambassador and their entire species. They're threatening to break off all diplomatic relations. Can't we just apologize? Jake asked desperately. I'll apologize. I'll do whatever it takes. It's not that simple, Dr. Wright said. He was scrolling through his datapad, reading messages as they came in. The Xanthari take insults very seriously. There are protocols for this kind of situation, but none of them are good. At minimum, you'll be sent back to Earth in disgrace. At worst, they might demand formal punishment. Pete spoke up, trying to help his friend. But it was an honest mistake. Doesn't that count for something? Cultural misunderstandings don't matter to the Xanthari, Commander Hayes said. They believe that anyone representing humanity should know better. And they're right. We've had months to study their culture. Every single crew member was briefed. Jake remembered the briefings. There had been so many rules and customs to learn. He had tried to pay attention, but there had been hundreds of details. How was he supposed to remember everything? And why hadn't anyone specifically mentioned not to compliment someone's appearance? I did study, Jake said weakly. I just didn't think. Humans compliment each other all the time. It's how we bond. It's how we show respect for someone's hard work. Dr. Wright nodded slowly. I know, and that's part of the problem. Human social customs are very different from Xanthari customs. What seems friendly and positive to us can be deeply offensive to them. Commander Hayes stood up and walked to the window. Below, the planet Keltros Prime continued its slow rotation. The 3 moons cast their shadows. Everything looked peaceful from up here. But Jake knew that down on that planet, important people were having angry conversations about him. Morrison, you're confined to quarters until further notice, the commander said without turning around. I need to figure out how to salvage this situation. If that's even possible. Jake stood up to leave. His whole body felt heavy. Pete gave him a sympathetic look but didn't say anything. What was there to say? Jake had destroyed months of careful diplomatic work with one stupid comment. Back in his small quarters, Jake sat on his bed and stared at the wall. He had never felt so stupid in his entire life. He had always prided himself on being friendly and good with people. Now he had insulted an entire alien civilization and possibly ruined humanity's chances at a crucial alliance. Hours passed. Jake couldn't eat. He couldn't sleep. He just kept replaying the moment in his head, watching Ambassador Krethzara's plates change color, seeing the guards raise their weapons. If he could go back and keep his mouth shut, he would do anything for that chance. Pete came by later that evening with some food. He sat on the floor of Jake's quarters and tried to make conversation. Look, maybe it won't be so bad. Maybe they'll understand it was a mistake. They won't, Jake said quietly. Dr. Wright made that clear. I'm going to be sent home. Everyone back on Earth will know I'm the idiot who destroyed our relationship with one of the most powerful alien civilizations. Pete didn't have an answer for that. They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Pete said something that made Jake look up. You know what's weird, though? I've been reading more about Xanthari culture. If commenting on their plates is so taboo, doesn't that mean they never talk about it at all? Like ever? Jake shrugged. I guess so. What's your point? I don't know, Pete said thoughtfully. It just seems sad, you know. Humans talk about fitness and health all the time. It's how we encourage each other and improve. If they can't ever talk about it, how do they deal with insecurities or problems? It was an interesting question, but Jake was too miserable to think about it much. He just wanted this nightmare to end. 2 days passed. Jake stayed in his quarters, feeling more miserable with each hour. The ship buzzed with rumors about what would happen next. Some crew members said Jake would be put on trial. Others whispered that the Xanthari might demand he never be allowed in space again. Pete brought him meals and updates, but there wasn't much good news to share. Commander Hayes was working around the clock, trying to communicate with the Xanthari government. Every message she sent received either cold silence or formal rejection. The situation seemed hopeless. Dr. Wright had compiled a report suggesting that Jake be immediately sent back to Earth before things got worse. On the 3rd day, something unexpected happened. A communication request came through to the ship. It was marked urgent and classified. Commander Hayes was in a meeting with her senior staff when the message arrived. The communications officer who received it looked confused as she read the sender information. "Commander," the officer said hesitantly, "we have an incoming private communication request from the planet." "From the Xanthari government?" Hayes asked, looking up from her datapad. "No, ma'am. From Ambassador Krethazara herself. She's requesting a direct line to the ship." "Private channel." The room went silent. Everyone exchanged worried glances. Dr. Wright frowned and checked his cultural database. "That's unusual. Very unusual. In Xanthari protocol, official responses should come through their government channels, not from individual diplomats." Commander Hayes felt her stomach tighten. This could be anything. Maybe the ambassador wanted to deliver the bad news personally. Maybe she wanted to make additional demands. Either way, there was no choice but to accept the call. "Open the channel," Hayes ordered. "Route it to my private office." "Right, you're with me." They hurried to the commander's office. The screen flickered to life and Ambassador Krethzara appeared. She was alone, which was also unusual. Her crystalline plates had returned to their normal blue and purple colors, though they seemed slightly dimmer than before. Her large eyes looked directly at the camera. "Commander Hayes," the ambassador said. Her voice came through the translator as calm and measured. "I request a conversation about the incident 3 days ago." Hayes sat up straight, trying to look professional despite her exhaustion. "Ambassador, I want to offer my deepest apologies for Engineer Morrison's behavior. It was completely inappropriate and—" Krethzara raised one of her long, crystalline fingers. "Please let me speak first. What I have to say may surprise you." Dr. Wright leaned forward, his eyes wide. This wasn't following any protocol he knew. Commander Hayes nodded silently, giving the ambassador permission to continue. "After the incident, I was very angry," Krethzara said. "The insult seemed deliberate and disrespectful. I reported it to my government immediately. They were equally outraged. Many demanded severe consequences for the engineer and for your mission." Hayes felt her heart sink. Here it came. The demands and punishments. But the ambassador continued. "However, I could not stop thinking about the incident. I accessed your cultural databases to understand human behavior better. I watched videos of human interactions. I read about your concepts of compliments and encouragement." She paused. "I began to realize that Engineer Morrison truly meant no offense. He was attempting to express appreciation in the way humans do naturally." Commander Hayes blinked in surprise. "Ambassador, that's very understanding of you, but it doesn't change the fact that he violated your cultural norms." "No, it does not," Krethzara agreed. "But it made me consider something I have never thought about before." She shifted slightly and her plates caught the light. "Commander, may I speak candidly? Not as an ambassador, but as an individual." Hayes exchanged a quick glance with Dr. Wright, who shrugged. "Of course, Ambassador." Krethzara seemed to gather herself before speaking. "In all my years, no one has ever acknowledged the work I put into maintaining my exoskeleton. Because it is taboo in our culture, we never speak of it. We never share our concerns or our pride in our efforts. We suffer our insecurities in complete silence." She looked down at her own plates. "I was injured many years ago in an accident. Some of my plates healed incorrectly. They are not symmetrical and the patterns are flawed. I have spent countless hours trying to correct this through exercises and mineral treatments. But I could never tell anyone. I could never ask for advice. I could never hear that my efforts had any value." Commander Hayes felt her breath catch. This was the most personal thing any Xanthari had ever shared with humans. Dr. Wright was typing furiously on his datapad, recording every word. When Engineer Morrison spoke, "My first reaction was shock and anger," Krethzara continued. "But later I realized something. He noticed my efforts. He saw that I work hard, and in his culture, that observation was worthy of acknowledgement." Her plates seemed to brighten slightly. "No one has ever done that before." "Ambassador," Hayes said carefully, "are you saying you weren't entirely offended?" "I am saying that I was offended by the cultural violation, yes. But I was also touched by the intention behind it." Krethzara leaned closer to the camera. "Commander, I have a request. It is unusual, and my government does not know I am making it. But I wish to speak with Engineer Morrison." Dr. Wright nearly fell out of his chair. Commander Hayes felt her mind racing. "You want to speak with him? May I ask why?" "I want to understand human fitness culture better," Krethzara said. "I want to know why you speak so openly about physical improvement. why you encourage each other, why you find strength in sharing these things." She paused. "And perhaps I want to tell someone about my own struggles. Someone who might understand." Commander Hayes took a moment to process this. It was completely unexpected. Every protocol and prediction had been wrong. The ambassador wasn't demanding punishment. She was asking for conversation. "Ambassador, I need to be honest with you," Hayes said. "Engineer Morrison is devastated by what happened. He's terrified that he's destroyed our diplomatic relationship. I'm not sure he's in the best state for conversation right now." "Then perhaps," Krethzara said, "you should tell him that this conversation might repair what was broken. Tell him that his words, though inappropriate by our standards, opened a door that has been sealed in Zenthari culture for generations." Her plates shimmered. "Tell him that I want to learn from him. And perhaps he can learn from me as well." After the call ended, Commander Hayes sat back in her chair. She looked at Dr. Wright, who was still staring at the now blank screen. Finally, she laughed. It was a short, disbelieving laugh, but it felt good after days of tension. "Did that really just happen?" she asked. Dr. Wright shook his head slowly. "I need to rewrite every assumption we have about the Zenthari. This is unprecedented." Commander Hayes stood up. "Well, I guess I need to talk to Morrison. He's not going to believe this." She found Jake in his quarters, lying on his bed and staring at the ceiling. He looked terrible. His hair was messy and he had dark circles under his eyes. When he saw the commander, he sat up quickly, expecting the worst news. "Morrison," Hayes said, unable to keep a small smile from her face. "We need to talk, and you're going to want to sit down for this." Jake stared at Commander Hayes like she had grown a second head. "She wants to talk to me? The ambassador I insulted wants to have a conversation with me." "That's exactly what she said," Hayes confirmed. She sat down on the chair in his small quarters. "Morrison, I need you to understand how significant this is. The ambassador is reaching out against protocol, against her own culture's rules, because something about your comment affected her in a way we didn't expect." Pete, who had been bringing Jake dinner when the commander arrived, stood frozen by the door. "Is this a trap? Like, is she going to demand an apology and then have him arrested or something?" Dr. Wright, who had followed the commander, shook his head. "I don't think so. Everything about her message suggested genuine interest. But Morrison, you need to be extremely careful. This is delicate territory." Jake ran his hands through his messy hair. "I don't even know what to say to her." "What if I make it worse?" "Be yourself," Commander Hayes said. "But be your careful, thoughtful self, not your blurt-out-whatever-you're-thinking self." She gave him a pointed look. "The ambassador wants to learn about human fitness culture. She wants to understand why we're so open about physical improvement. Can you handle that?" Jake took a deep breath. His hands were shaking slightly. "I can try. I mean, fitness and exercise are things I actually know about. I just need to make sure I don't say anything stupid again." "We'll supervise the first conversation," Dr. Wright said. "I'll be there to help if you start heading into culturally sensitive territory." The meeting was scheduled for the next day. Jake barely slept that night. He kept rehearsing what he might say, then scrapping it all and starting over. Pete stayed with him, helping him prepare and occasionally telling him to calm down. When the time came, Jake walked into the small conference room where the video link had been set up. Commander Hayes sat to his left and Dr. Wright sat to his right. Both of them looked tense but hopeful. The screen flickered on and Ambassador Krethzara appeared. Jake felt his throat go dry. The last time he had seen her, she had been storming out of the observation deck with armed guards. Now she sat alone in what looked like a private office. Her plates were a calm blue-purple color. "Engineer Morrison," she said. Her voice through the translator was neutral but not hostile. "Ambassador Krethzara," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I want to apologize for my comment the other day. I didn't understand the cultural significance and I caused you offense. I'm truly sorry." Krethzara tilted her head slightly. "Your apology is noted, but I did not request this conversation to receive apologies. I requested it to understand. Tell me, when you made your comment, what were you thinking?" Jake glanced at Dr. Wright, who nodded encouragingly. "I was thinking that your exoskeleton looked really well maintained. The definition in the plates, the symmetry, the way the light hit them. It looked like something that took a lot of work and dedication." He paused. "Where I come from, when you see someone who clearly puts effort into their physical fitness, you acknowledge it. It's a sign of respect." "Respect," Krethzara repeated. "In our culture, noticing such things is considered invasive. private, yet you say it is respectful in yours? Yes, Jake said. Humans bond over fitness. We encourage each other. If someone loses weight or gains muscle or improves their health, we celebrate it together. It's how we motivate each other to keep going. Krethazara was silent for a moment. Her plates shifted through subtle color changes that Jake didn't understand. Finally, she spoke. In Zenthari culture, we do not speak of our bodies except in medical necessity or with life mates. It creates isolation. We struggle alone with our insecurities. That sounds really hard, Jake said honestly. Humans struggle with body image too, but at least we can talk about it. We can ask for help or advice. I have a question, Krethazara said. You mentioned symmetry. Did you notice that some of my plates are asymmetrical? Jake's eyes widened. This felt like dangerous territory. Dr. Wright tensed beside him. But Jake remembered what Commander Hayes had said. Be yourself. Be honest. I noticed some variation, Jake admitted. But honestly, I thought it made the overall pattern more interesting. Perfect symmetry can sometimes look artificial. The slight variations looked natural and earned. There was a long pause. Then Krethazara did something that stunned everyone in the room. Her plates brightened considerably, shifting to lighter shades of blue. Dr. Wright frantically checked his database and whispered to Commander Hayes. That's a positive emotional response. She's pleased. I was injured years ago, Krethazara said. These plates healed incorrectly. I have worked for years to correct them, but the asymmetry remains. I have been deeply self-conscious about this flaw, but I could never discuss it with anyone. It's not a flaw, Jake said. It's part of your story. Humans have scars too. Sometimes they bother us, but sometimes we learn to see them as proof that we survived something difficult. Krethazara leaned forward. Tell me more about human fitness culture. How do you maintain your bodies? How do you encourage each other? For the next hour, Jake talked about gyms and workout routines. He explained the concept of personal trainers and fitness communities. He described how humans shared their progress on social media, how they formed running groups and sports teams. He talked about the positive reinforcement that helped people stay motivated. Krethazara listened intently, asking questions. Some of her questions surprised Jake. She wanted to know about dealing with plateaus and progress. She asked about overcoming discouragement. She inquired about finding balance between improvement and acceptance. These are things I have wondered about for years, Krethazara admitted, but I had no one to ask. The isolation of maintaining one's exoskeleton is profound. That really does sound lonely, Jake said. Humans need community support for physical health. It's not just about the exercise itself. It's about having people who understand your struggles and celebrate your victories. Do you think, Krethazara asked slowly, such concepts could be adapted for Zenthari culture? Could we find ways to support each other while respecting our traditions? Jake thought carefully before answering. I think any culture can benefit from supportive communities. Maybe it doesn't have to be as open as humans are. Maybe it could start small. Support groups for Zenthari who have injuries or health concerns. Places where they can discuss their struggles privately but together. Dr. Wright was taking frantic notes. Commander Hayes looked amazed. This conversation had gone far beyond what anyone expected. Krethzara's plates brightened further. Engineer Morrison, you have given me much to consider. I would like to continue these conversations if you are willing. I'd be honored, Jake said sincerely. After the call ended, Commander Hayes turned to Jake with an expression of disbelief. Morrison, do you realize what just happened? You didn't just fix your mistake. You might have started something revolutionary. What do you mean? Jake asked. Dr. Wright looked up from his notes, his eyes shining with excitement. If Ambassador Krethazara starts advocating for wellness support communities among the Zenthari, it could change their entire culture. This is unprecedented. Pete burst into the room, having watched from outside. Dude, you just became a cultural ambassador by accident. But the real surprise came the next day when a private message arrived for Jake. It was from a young Zenthari named Velmora. The message was brief but significant. Ambassador Krethzara mentioned your conversations. I also have struggled with my plates after an illness. Could I speak with you as well? In secret, if possible. My family must not know. Jake showed the message to Commander Hayes. She read it and sat down slowly. Morrison, I think we need to be very careful here. This could help a lot of people. But it could also anger conservative Xanthari who want to maintain their cultural taboos. So what do we do? Jake asked. We move forward carefully, Hayes said. We help where we can, but we respect their culture too. This is going to be complicated. Jake looked at the message again, a young Xanthari reaching out for help, too afraid to ask their own people. It reminded him why he had gotten into space exploration in the first place. To make connections. To help others. Even if he did it in the most accidentally awkward way possible. Over the next 2 weeks, Jake had several more conversations with Ambassador Krethazara. Each one was supervised by Dr. Wright, but the conversations became more relaxed as they continued. The ambassador opened up about her struggles with maintaining her exoskeleton after her injury. She described the mineral treatments and specialized exercises that Xanthari used, which fascinated Jake from a biological perspective. Meanwhile, more private messages arrived from other Xanthari. Young ones mostly. Some had injuries. Others had genetic conditions that affected their plate development. A few were simply insecure about their appearance compared to others. All of them were desperate for someone to talk to, someone who wouldn't judge them by Xanthari cultural standards. Jake answered each message carefully, with Dr. Wright reviewing everything before it was sent. He offered encouragement and asked questions about their specific situations. He shared human perspectives on overcoming physical insecurities. Most importantly, he listened, but not everyone on Keltros Prime was happy about these developments. Commander Hayes started receiving angry communications from conservative Xanthari government officials. They accused the humans of corrupting Xanthari youth. They claimed that discussing such private matters was destroying traditional values. Some demanded that all contact between Jake and any Xanthari citizens be stopped immediately. Ambassador Krethazara found herself under pressure as well. She was called before the High Council to explain her actions. It was a formal session, with all the most powerful Xanthari leaders present. The council chamber was an impressive circular room with walls made of the same crystalline material as Xanthari plates. Light filtered through from above, creating rainbow patterns across the floor. Krethazara stood in the center of the room, facing the council members who sat in elevated positions around her. The head counselor, an elderly Xanthari named Thrazkan, spoke first. His plates were dark gray with age, but his voice was strong. Ambassador Krethazara, you have violated protocols by engaging in private discussions about exoskeleton maintenance with an alien. Worse, you have encouraged others to do the same. This is unacceptable. Krethazara kept her posture straight and formal. Her plates remained a steady blue despite her nervousness. Honored Council, I understand your concerns, but I ask that you hear what I have learned from these conversations. There is nothing to learn from discussing such private matters, another counselor said sharply. These taboos exist for good reasons. They maintain our dignity and privacy. Do they? Krethazara asked. The question hung in the air. Several counselors shifted uncomfortably. Or do they maintain our isolation and suffering? Thrazkan's plates darkened. Explain yourself, Ambassador. Krethazara took a breath. This was the moment she had been preparing for. Honored Council, I have carried shame about my injury for years. The asymmetry of my plates has caused me constant distress. But I could never speak of it. I could never ask for help or advice. I suffered alone as our culture demands. She looked around at the council members. But I know I am not alone in this suffering. Many Xanthari struggle with injuries, genetic conditions, or simple insecurities about their physical form. Yet we are all silent. We all pretend that everything is perfect while we struggle in private. This is the way of our people, Thrazkan said. Privacy and dignity. Is it dignified to suffer needlessly? Krethazara challenged. The humans have shown me a different approach. They support each other openly. They share their struggles and victories. They improve themselves through community encouragement. Her plates brightened slightly. When Engineer Morrison acknowledged my efforts to maintain my exoskeleton, it was the first time in years that I felt seen. Not judged. Not pitied. Simply seen and respected for the work I do. A younger council member spoke up. Her name was Saramika, and she was known for being more progressive. The ambassador makes an interesting point. Perhaps there is value in finding balance between our traditions and new approaches. This is corruption of our culture. An older counselor objected. Next, you will suggest we discuss such matters publicly like the humans do. No, Krethazara said firmly. I would never suggest abandoning our cultural values entirely, but perhaps we can create spaces where those who struggle can find support. Private groups supervised by medical professionals, where Xanthari can discuss their concerns safely. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some members were outraged by the suggestion. Others seemed cautiously interested. Thrazkon raised his hand for silence. The arguing stopped immediately. Ambassador Krethazara, you ask for something unprecedented, he said. But I notice that your plates are brighter than I have seen them in years. Others have mentioned the same about themselves after these human conversations. He paused. Perhaps there is something to consider here. What happened next surprised everyone. Sarmika stood up from her elevated seat. In the Xanthari Council, standing during a session was a sign that something very important was about to be said. Honored Council, I must make a confession, she said. Her plates flickered nervously. I have also been speaking with the human engineer in secret. After I heard about Ambassador Krethzara's conversations, I reached out to him. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Another counselor stood. Then another. In total, 5 council members stood, all admitting that they had secretly contacted Jake or read transcripts of his conversations with others. Thrazkon looked around the chamber with an expression that might have been surprised if humans could read Xanthari faces. It seems, he said slowly, that this issue affects more of us than we realized. The debate continued for hours. In the end, the council reached a compromise. They would allow the creation of private wellness support groups for Xanthari who wished to participate. These groups would be overseen by medical professionals and would maintain strict confidentiality. Ambassador Krethzara would work with the human delegation to develop appropriate guidelines that respected Xanthari culture while allowing for supportive community. When Krethzara returned to her office, she immediately contacted the Horizons Gate. Commander Hayes answered, with Jake and Dr. Wright beside her. Commander, Krethzara said, her plates bright with what they had learned was happiness. I have news. The High Council has approved a pilot program for wellness support communities. It would not have been possible without the conversation started by Engineer Morrison. Jake felt relief wash over him. Ambassador, I'm so glad something good came from my terrible mistake. It was not entirely a mistake, Krethzara said. Sometimes the most important changes begin with unexpected moments. Your comment was inappropriate by our standards, yes, but it opened a door that needed opening. Over the next month, the first Xanthari wellness support groups began meeting. They were small and private, but participants reported feeling less isolated. Young Xanthari like Velamora finally had safe spaces to discuss their struggles. Injured Xanthari could share recovery techniques. Those with genetic conditions could find others who understood their challenges. The program was controversial. Conservative Xanthari continued to criticize it. But slowly, more and more Xanthari expressed interest in participating. The cultural shift had begun. Commander Hayes filed her final report on the mission. She wrote about the unexpected success that came from cross-cultural misunderstanding. She noted how Jake's honest human response had inadvertently revealed a gap in Xanthari culture that many had felt but none had been able to address. The diplomatic mission that had nearly failed became one of the most successful human-alien cultural exchanges in history. The Xanthari government agreed to a full alliance with humanity, seeing value in the human perspective on wellness and community support. On the day before the Horizons Gate was scheduled to leave orbit, Ambassador Krethzara made one final video call to Jake. She was alone in her office, as she had been during their first real conversation. Engineer Morrison, I wanted to thank you personally before you depart, she said. I should be thanking you, Ambassador, Jake replied. You could have ended my career and destroyed human-Xanthari relations. Instead, you turned my mistake into something positive. We did that together, Krethzara corrected. Your honest appreciation made me realize what my people were missing. But it was the conversations that followed, where you listened and learned as much as you taught, that truly made the difference. Her plates shifted to a warm purple color. I have learned much from humans. You are open and direct in ways that seem strange to us, but that openness allows for connections that we Xanthari have denied ourselves. Perhaps there is strength in vulnerability after all. And I've learned that there's value in privacy and careful consideration, Jake said. Humans could probably benefit from thinking before we speak sometimes. He smiled. Though I'm still working on that part. After the call ended, Jake walked through the ship to the observation deck where this whole situation had started. He looked down at Keltras Prime with its purple oceans and 3 moons. So much had changed since that first disastrous meeting. Pete found him there. Ready to head home? Yeah, Jake said. Though I have to admit, I'm going to miss this. Even the terrifying parts. You know they're calling you the accidental ambassador back on Earth.